All right, this one comes to us from Raylan in Liverpool. I am a first-time homebuyer. I don't have a large amount of money saved and would like to purchase a home with a lower down payment. I do not know whether to use FHA or conventional financing. Is it possible to get pre-approved by a lender for both options? What do you think?
Okay, so let's just answer the question first, and then we'll kind of unpack it from there. Yes, you can get pre-approved for both types of loans, and I always tell buyers to do that if they can. Now, FHA has lighter regulations on pre-approvals than conventional does for other reasons, like credit score and things like that. So if you're not able to get pre-approved for conventional, that's fine. We will find a way to make FHA work. We'll make it happen. With that being said, a conventional loan is much easier to get an offer accepted on. So if you can be pre-approved for both, it is worth it to be pre-approved for both, even if there are slightly different price points, right? So you may be able to get pre-approved for FHA up to $200, but for conventional, you're only at $180. Well, let's go ahead and get those two pre-approval letters, and if we find a house for $175, boom, we're putting in the conventional. Now, if we find one for $195, okay, now we're going to use the FHA and try to make that work. So the answer to the question is yes, you can and should get both pre-approval letters, even if they're at different numbers. It's still useful to know what you can spend at different types of pre-approval letters. Then the other thing to note is if it's specifically a down payment issue for first-time home buyers in particular, just about every lender is going to have a 3% down conventional option. Now, FHA's minimum down payment is 3.5% down. So you actually can get a lower down payment on a conventional loan if you are a first-time home buyer with that 3% down conventional. So if your problem is only your cash to close, conventional can be just as good or even slightly better. Now, the other caveat here is that FHA loans, seller concessions can be bumped up to 6% of the purchase price, whereas a conventional loan, you can only get 3% of your purchase price. So part of the thing with your cash to close, one of the ways to offset that is to increase the price by 3%. So let's just make the numbers easy. Let's say we're buying a $100,000 house, then we add 3% seller concessions. So we're going to offer them a purchase price of $103,000, and then they are going to credit us $3,000 towards our closing costs. So that's a good way to reduce your cash to close. Now, you are borrowing on 103, you're not borrowing on 100, so your mortgage payment's going to go up slightly, but that's a good way if your problem specifically is cash to close. Seller concessions are a great way to do it. Now, FHA is going to allow you 6% seller concessions, so that $100,000 home, you can get 6,000 seller credits towards your closing costs instead of just 3. So that's where FHA, even though it has that 0.5% higher as opposed to conventional for first-time home buyers, you can be eligible for a higher seller concession amount. So even though your down payment is slightly higher, your cash to close may end up being netting slightly lower. So that's some things to consider. The last thing I'll say on seller concessions is that the house has to appraise for the full purchase price. So in that $103,000 example we were talking about for conventional, the house has to appraise for $103,000, and then they'll give you the $3,000 credit at closing. And so that's where in a multiple offer situation, that's where seller concessions can end up hurting you because the sellers might be worried about that higher appraisal number. And so that's where in a multiple offer situation, the cleaner offer without the seller concessions is going to be favorable. And that's where I always say if you're doing an escalation clause, make your escalation interval higher. So if normally we were going to say we're going to offer $1,000 or $2,000 above the highest offer, if we're FHA with seller concessions, maybe we're going to say we're going to offer $5,000 above the highest offer. So that way we're incentivizing the sellers to pick our offer, even though there's that slight appraisal risk, we're overcoming that with a higher purchase price.
Right, sweeten the deal a little bit, give them a reason to pick your offer over the other one, right?
Exactly.
Greg Wakeman, dishing the info there. Love it.
I do what I can.